What an amazing day it is to be alive. It's Friday. It's Friday. Thank God it is Friday. I missed you guys. I missed you on Wednesday for real. It's like there's a huge hole in my heart whenever I miss the show because I absolutely love it. You're listening to PaleocratDiaries. Come on now. Ow! We're going to rock out today. And why? Because it is the day that the Lord has made. We're going to rejoice. We're going to be glad in it. We're going to take a knee for Christ the King, resolving deep inside to give it everything we've got, regulating our thoughts, our words, and our deeds, according to the church, right? That divine constitution of the visible church. By the way, if you missed out on Monday's show having to do with sedevacantism, it was a good one. It's a good one. Do you still see the fire? Do you still see the smoke? It's there forever. It's there forever, because St. Francis de Sales wiped their faces off. Wham, 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 back and forth, guns akimbo. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about some knowledge. We're going to talk about how we can know anything at all, and what happens when an unbeliever dares to exalt their ideas, about ideas, against the one who is the creator of all things, and who knows all things. Every idea, it's his. Yeah, we rock them out, destroy them. Deconstruction, showing, manifesting, exposing that beast beneath, that presuppositional framework, that paradigmatic level. That's where we're going. That's where we're pointing, okay? And then we're going to construct. We're going to construct, maybe not this episode. I think this is the deconstruction episode. It is, the deconstruction one. So we got to resolve right now, before we even move into it, what we do every single time, to never give up, to keep on smiling, and to remember that we too one day shall die. In fact, right now, being May 20th, it's especially important because my daughter's birthday is on Sunday. And so my daughter's birthday, she was born in 2004, and so it'd be an amazing thing, to think about. You know what I mean? It's an amazing thing to think about, that she died when she was 12. She died of brain cancer. If you're not familiar with that story, I shared it actually just yesterday in the Wolfpack chat. Speaking of that, I'll just pop that up right now. We're not going to spend too much time, but I got to say hi to my peeps, all right? So here we go. So here's the thing. Yesterday, we had a new person over at the Wolfpack chat. And we've been having a lot, right? More and more people. I think one day we had like 9 or 10 people, brand new people show up. It was totally awesome. We've been playing videos and streaming them over there, and that way people we don't record it, right? It's a watch party. That's all it is. So it's a watch party. We've watched different debates. We watched one on classical theism, presuppositionalism, one about presuppositionalism versus atheism, which was hilarious. It was hilarious. And we talk throughout the series, we talk about where different sides might go wrong, where they're strong, things like that. So we did that. We watched that. What else did we watch? Oh, we watched Richard Abrani. He's the end times prophet. He's the guy that believes he's one of the end times prophets. The whole church is toast, right? Popes are gone. Cardinals are gone. Priests are gone. They're all gone. But he's here. Thank God for that. He's one of the prophets of the book of Revelation. And he's here to let everybody know that even though there's not a pope, homeboy there, he is kind of, basically the Pope. So he has the authority of the Pope because of his role in the end times. Because the church has been gone for like 1,000 years. I'm not even joking. 1,000 years. Just think about it. Yeah, they really mean it when they say that there's no cutoff line for the interregnum. Yeah, we talked about that again. Monday's episode, that's over at RNT. Or make it even easier. Go in the description in the video below. Or in the description of the video below. In the description below the video. If you go there, you'll see that I have a link to the entire catalog of PaleocratDiaries on meaning of Catholic, reason and theology, as well as stuff that I did before. Okay, so you can find all of that in the description below. But we watched all of it. And it was a lady that came in, right, brand new. And she wasn't too familiar with the show, right? So I introduced myself. I told her who I was, right? I'm the Kaiser over there. And so told her who I was. And then I was really glad that she was there. And she talked about her grandson, who right now has brain cancer. Okay. So we talked about it, and it didn't even hit me until later. It didn't even hit me that my daughter's birthday is in 2 days. You know, it's one of those things, right? So much of this show is dedicated in her honor. The owl shield back there, that's her. Where I'm sitting right now, this is where her heart beat for the very last time. She died in this room. She died right where I'm sitting, and I carried her from this room to the hearse in the front yard, in the street. And so a lot of that, the never give up, keep on smiling, remember you're going to die, dream bigger thoughts. The end of the show has her in it. And yet it's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? The way that God has made us, the way that he's made the world, that through traumatic things, right? We have to continue pressing on. And that involves different kinds of sadness, doesn't it? Different kinds of things that you got to deal with, because all of a sudden, you know, the sadness is really that you're not really thinking about her as often as you were. You forget birthdays, stuff like that, until it comes up close, right? Or the day that she died, different hallmarks and stuff. And it's easy to do because it's tragic. It's traumatic. But so I'm really glad to be with you today, right? Because this weekend will inevitably involve tears for me. Inevitably. It does every year. You know, her birthday does. I normally make a video of some kind. I've done it multiple times. We'll see. We'll see if I make a video this year about it. But if you're unfamiliar with it, you can make sure to go to my personal YouTube channel. That's a Paleocrat. You can go there and see that. And there's a video on atheist family converts to Catholicism after daughter's life and death with cancer or something like that. It's a long name, but you'll see it right away. It's got like 20,000 views, tons and tons of comments. You can learn more about the show, why I do the show, how we came back, what it's all about, etc. A lot of it is right there, okay? A lot of it is right here too. And in fact, and forgive me for the allergies. It's crazy. We're in allergy season. In fact, I think I forgot to take my allergy stuff today. Yeah, my mega hot half Korean beauty queen wife could definitely hook a brother up. So I'm not gonna do it though. She has to bring it in before I do the promo here in just a second. But I wanted to share something with you. Also, I know I said I was gonna get to these comments real quick. And I'm sorry for taking a little longer because we have a lot to do, seriously. But I wanted to show you this. Check this out. Oh, okay. Hold on. No. Okay, I got to fit this bugger to the screen. Let's see here. We're going to transform this, and we are going to fit to screen. Look at this. Look at that. I just wanted to say thank you. There's a guy in the chat who's been doing this right here, and I should have kept it enlarged. This is actually worthy of time because nobody's ever done anything like this for me, and it's really awesome to see how the show is growing. His name is Yuri, and he's from Germany. Okay, really cool dude, and it was awesome because after each show we do a live chat. Okay, and that's the link to the Wolfpack chat on Telegram. We do a live chat about the show. And so he was in the live chat one day, and he just popped this bugger up there and started just showing everybody his drawing as he was doing it in real time. Okay? So as he was doing it in real time. Now, let me go ahead. Let me go ahead and get this thing enlarged. Let me go ahead and do that. Let me see if I can. Yeah, look at this. Look at this. It's got so many parts of the show. Okay, I'm just gonna max this bugger out. We're just gonna do it. It's worth it. This is like the coolest thing in the world. And as I said, I've never had anything like this for me before. And we'll start from the bottom, right? So check this out. This is awesome. Look at this. Even the font, enthusiasm, the devermer, right? You've got straight to the dome. You've got the old Trump visor. Look at that, Tota Popinski. You've got of course the League of Christ Sovereign. Haley Louie's in there. She's all over the place. Got multiple phones. She got her different screens up because she's all over the place, helping people out. Here's my family. Oh yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, there's my family. There's me with the old stash. Yeah, right here. You've got Verms in the brain, enthusiasm in the veins. My wife with her amazing ice cream cone. These are actually based on real pictures. Ronald Knox, Francis de Sales, Father Lassance. Francis de Sales is over here. Okay. You've got the carrier pigeons that we release every day. It's awesome. This is awesome, right? The gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. Bada boom, bada bing. How did we get here, right? That was enthusiasm. That's what we were talking about. And then at the top, this blew my mind. This made me cry. I saw this and my first thought was the Trinity. It's not. If you look, it says here, dream bigger thoughts. And above it, it says, praying for you, Papa. That's my daughter in the middle with Our Lady and our Lord. I can't thank Yuri enough for this. We're going to frame it. We're going to frame it. You better believe it, buddy. And I'm not going to cry. I can't do it. I can't do it. But I wanted to show you. And I just want to thank you because this show is really, it's onward and upward, isn't it? It is literally just like blam, blam, blam all the time. All the time. Onward and upward more. And it's awesome. And it's because of you. And you can say it's because of me. It's symbiotic, right? It goes back and forth. It's what we're about. So, all right, in the comments. Again, I can't cry. Alexander, what's up? It's good to see you there, man. Hello, Kaiser. Yes, man. Wesley, hi, I'm trying to reach you about your extended warranty. What are you talking about? My extended warranty? Yeah, okay. Meaning of Catholic, God bless the Wolf Pack and the Kaiser for his and his family taking a knee for the king. Dude, it's awesome to see you, Kevin. It's awesome to see you. Sarah, good morning to you. Definitely, 100%. Let's see here. Boomered and muted. I'm not boomered. I'm not muted. What you talking about? What you talking about? You can't trick me this time. You can't trick me. Let's see. Josh, looking forward to possibly meeting you face to face when I bring my girls down for the Latin Mass at Sacred Heart this summer. Dude, you let me know when you'll be there. You shall definitely meet me face to face. Yes. Christine, hey, Wolfpack. Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London playing in my head. It's good to see you, by the way, Christine. You're beautifully and wonderfully made. Never forget it, girl. Never forget it. All right, let's see here. Yeah. It sounds like someone has the case of the Fridays. I do a little bit in my nose, the congestion. Pray for me. Pray for me. Let's see here. And the rest of them, we'll just call it quits for now. All right, very good. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. And, of course, go and check out the SAINTMAKER. We're going to, real quick, as soon as we get back from this, we're going to go ahead and get that alert system going, because today we're talking about an awesome, awesome topic. And it's one of those things that once you get it, once you understand, and once you see how it works in apologetic situations, you'll be able to talk to everyday people, the people at work, your classmates and coworkers, your friends and your frenemies, and you'll be able to use these arguments all the time. And it's not just an argument that's like, well, it adds to the idea of the possibility. No. The very exercise of arguing in the first place is at stake. The very idea of knowledge at all is at stake. Justifying it, giving an account for it. All right, giving an account for it. I'm giving an account for this right here. This is the SAINTMAKER. Changed my life. I think if you go back and you look and you see the trajectory, you'll see two things at play, right? No, well, three. Number one, your boy. Number two, the wolf pack. Okay? The wolf pack. Number three, you're going to see the SAINTMAKER. That once I started to implement those things into my life and begin to think about my time and organize and structure my days around the centrality of our Lord, and thinking about my work that way, just even being familiar, right? Just being familiar with the days, the liturgical cycle, to be prepared ahead of time, to know what's coming up. Speaking of coming up on Sunday, my boys are serving. The guy who coordinates it had no clue that it was my daughter's her birthday. So I think it's really powerful. But it's one of those things, right? And once you start doing that, and you've got God at the center of yourself and your family, and you begin just thinking about your work, who you are, in a way that is more robustly Catholic, following the wisdom of the saints, you're going to excel. So, yeah, so you're going to excel. And here's why. We're going to show you a bunch of reasons right now. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The SAINTMAKER is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The SAINTMAKER is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days, and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the SAINTMAKER is used by hardworking Catholics, like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca, and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the SAINTMAKER out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your SAINTMAKER journey today. You got to do it. thesaintmaker.com/PaleocratDiaries. It's going to change your life. Speaking of changing your life, right there. It is the Paleocrat Diaries alert system. That is the sound that's going all around right now, the planet. Because the admins, the mods, the freaks and the geeks over at Paleocrat Diaries Wolfpack Chat, they are howling at the sun. They're racing over to their bunk beds. They're pulling out their water beds and their bunk beds. And they're pulling out these amazing boxes, opening them up. And there are carrier pigeons going all over the world, letting people know that Paleocrat Diaries is on the air. Yes, because why? Because we're talking about God, we're talking about apologetics, and we're talking about the impossibility of the contrary, that without God, you can know nothing. Because God not only created the world, He holds it together. He pre-interprets all things. In Him is the equal ultimacy of the one and the many. And that's how we are able to analogously know anything at all, because He has a coherent understanding through and through, from beginning to end, all about, down, beneath the bone and the marrow, right? All the way. So get out that didgeridoo. Get out that xylophone. Get out those spoons. I don't care what you're using. The guitar, of course, Jedediah, probably smoking a Marlboro. If you're in another side of the planet and you've got yourself a fire, break out those old smoke signals over and over and over. Let everybody know that they need to come. Why? Because we're advancing the kingdom. The empire's expanding. You're part of it. And I'm glad to be along for the ride. I'm glad to be along for the ride. God's in control. God's the one taking control. He's the one, all power, all authority, dominion, heaven and earth, right now, it is His. And we don't stand for neutrality, do we? We don't stand for neutrality at all. We sit there and we say it all belongs to Him. All wisdom, all knowledge, all understanding, it is Him. It begins with fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of those things, and in Christ are all of those things. He is the truth. He is the light that gives light unto men, that makes it so that we may know ourselves and know the world around us, to communicate that meaningfully to other people, without which we wouldn't even be able to function. We wouldn't be able to function at all. Everything so much depends on this. And we're going to be talking about it today. So let people know, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Man, dude, I love this thing. Love this show. Love this show. I do. Let me see here. All right. So here's the deal. We're talking today. I got to barrel through some of this. I'm hoping to get through all of it. If I don't, that's okay. Right? We got more shows ahead, Lord willing, right? Lord willing, we got a bunch of shows ahead. Isn't it kind of fun to think about that, by the way? And we're going to be talking next week about returning to some of the cult stuff. I needed to go back because the books that I've been using, right, we've actually talked about, because I kind of flip-flop back and forth in these books, and I kind of went out of the order I originally intended. right? It's my fault. But I said there, and I said, man, if I go back to that, I'm actually talking about something I talked about in the Word Faith series. And so, we already talked a little bit about Madame Blavatsky, right? We already talked about a little bit about theosophy, talked a little bit about New Thought metaphysics, right? Where it came from. Oh, Quimby and Company, Baker and Company, but we did it in the context of the Word of Faith movement. So I have to reorganize some of that. So we're going to be talking about different groups, Church of Christ Scientists. I also, what is it? Is it the Swedish Borgians? How'd you pronounce the, like I've read about it. It's one of those things, unless you hear people talk about it. I've read about it, but I've never actually just sat there and, heard somebody. I've never met one, right? But I read about it yesterday. I'll tell you, you want to talk about a wild ride, that cat. Because most of the time, these cults, man, the leaders of those cults aren't necessarily the brightest dudes, the brightest bulbs on the tree and such. Whereas this guy, holy cow, this dude was super duper smart. So we got to deal with that cat sometimes. So we've got a lot coming up. The Baha'i faith. There's a bunch of stuff that we're gonna do. Bunch of stuff. But okay, this right here is R.M. Mannion, copyright 1999 and 2005. The Contingency of Knowledge and Revelatory Theism. Okay, if you'd like to get this link, just let me know. I'll put it in the description below after the show because I forgot to do it ahead of time. But you should go and check out that stuff anyway. There's a bunch of great links in there. The introduction. There are two fundamentally different ways to understand the world: intentional and accidental. An intentional world is one that comes about on purpose and for a purpose. It's a world that is what it is because someone intended for it to be that way. In contrast, an accidental world is one that comes about by pure chance, for no purpose and for no reason. It's a world that is what it is by accident. All worldviews are, at bottom, either intentional or accidental. So right away, when you're talking to different people, that's one of the first questions you really got to ask yourself. When you're talking about apologetics and you're saying, we're going to be going back and forth with worldviews. We're going to use this method, right, in dealing with people. You have to ask yourself and the person, where are they coming from? Because that's going to entail different stuff. Right? It's going to entail different arguments, things like that, different approaches, how you're going to do it. But at the bottom of it all, it is either accidental or it's intentional. These two kinds of worldviews describe very different worlds. They tell different stories about how the world came to be, about the nature of the world, and about the nature of man. They give different accounts regarding man's knowledge, right, his relationship to the world, and how the world can be known by man. These two accounts of man's knowledge present us with two very different epistemological stories, how we know what we know. And so you're asking, tell me a story. Tell me, how did we get here? Was it on purpose? Was it accidental? Right? The most extreme case, out of nothing, boink, kind of thing. Or it's just infinite. It's just been here forever. We have no reason why. Nothing like that. Right? Or it was created, and now you're in the world of the gods. Right? Well, unless those gods themselves were in fact products of the created order. And of course, we know we can drive home the fact that those gods are, regardless of the stories they tell of themselves, are in fact products of the world. Because there's only one God, right? Come on now. The first story is an epistemology in which man is aided. Okay, we're talking about how we know what we know, right? Our theory of knowledge. It's an epistemology that is grounded not by man, but by someone who is in a position to know. It's grounded by God, right? So in this regard, our theology is based on this. I was talking to some guys yesterday. I was over in Christian Wagner's Discord. And he's got a spicy Discord, not gonna lie. It's different than the Wolfpack. Because every once in a while, if I'm in the Wolfpack for hours doing chats and stuff, sometimes I'll head over there. I get messages and stuff on Discord. And so, I hopped in there. Byzantine Scotus was in there, right? John Fisher 2.0 was in there. Christian Wagner was in there. So it was a fascinating discussion. And we got into the conversation about the foundation of knowledge. Where is it? What is it? Where can we find it? Is it solid? How can we account account for and justify the one and the many? The idea that there's multiple different things and yet similarity and we'll talk about this more. As we look at these two stories, we will make a disquieting discovery. We'll find that the second story is not true. So we're going to find real quick that the accidental story is phony bologna sauce. It's complete nonsense, right? And this is just one of the many ways that you'd be able to demolish this. For the history of epistemology demonstrates that man, unaided, has not and cannot attain a foundation on which to base a theory of knowledge. So man, by himself, man in a natural world devoid of God, is unable to do this, to say, well, there's the foundation. And I can hear the outcry right now. I can hear that there people listening are like, what? How dare you? What about foundationalism? I hear people over at Catholic Answers use that all the time. We will see that any theory of knowledge that originates solely from man must be characterized as arbitrary, ambiguous, and incoherent. But if man has no coherent theory of knowledge, then his beliefs are without warrant. And if his beliefs are without warrant, then he can make no claim to be in possession of knowledge. Just think about it. So if you can't if you can't justify knowledge, if you can't give an account for how that would be possible, for those things that would be required for you to know anything at all, and yet, strangely enough, you know stuff, something's got to give. One of these things just isn't like the other. One of these things just isn't the same. It's got to go. It's got to go. And maybe you'll be like Wittgenstein, right? I was just reading this yesterday. Maybe you'll be like, and ultimately, this is the end game, my contention. This is the end game for every non-Catholic worldview. So anything that, and let me clarify this. When I say that the Catholic worldview alone accounts for that, people say, well, there was a worldview before Catholicism. I know, yes. I'm saying the world as Catholicism understands it. Metaphysics, ontology, right? Morality, ethics, epistemology, teleology, all these different things. Insofar as we understand those things as a unit, as a system, those things are true. We have the fullness of those truths. As one of the many reasons we're the mother and teacher of the world. And any system that deviates from that, to that degree, would be false. It's like saying, to any degree that anybody knows something that is different than how God would know that thing, something's got to give. Is it God's knowledge of it, or is it man's knowledge of it? I think it's safe to say that those who tune into this show, that they know that we're not going to sacrifice God's knowledge of anything. We're not going to say, well, I know how I know stuff. I have to change how God does it. We're not doing that. But at the end of every unbeliever's line of argument, we can do this. Right? This is 6.54 through 7 in the old Tractatus, right? Wittgenstein. He said, my propositions serve as elucidations in the following way. So his propositions, this whole book so far, it's short. I'm glad, because he's been roping us along, apparently. Anyone who understands me, anyone who understands what he's getting at, eventually recognizes them as nonsensical. What? Okay. When he has used them as steps to climb up beyond them, he must, so to speak, throw away the ladder after he has climbed up it. He must transcend these propositions, and then he will see the world aright. What we cannot speak about, we must pass over in silence. The only problem is that people have a really difficult time being silent, including Wittgenstein. Came back later, not too long later, had to get back in the game. It's like the quietist, unable to ever be quiet. You know what I mean? What's up with that? They're constantly yapping. It's like that John Candy reference from Trains, Planes, and Automobiles, right? Or Steve Martin, right? Where it's a chatty Cathy doll, and it's like, pulling the string. They just can't stop. Because it's inevitable. We're creatures in this way. In fact, very few people ever live out that life of silence. Very, very few. And even most of those have times where they're able to talk or to sing or to pray. It's not complete silence. And they know things. So our first story goes like this. Once upon a time, there were those who believed that fundamental reality was one. This one they believe was personal, all-powerful, all-rational, and exceedingly creative. But they did not think this belief to be an arbitrary metaphysical speculation. Rather, it is their testimony that the one had revealed this to them. They believed this revelation was true because it explained a great many things. You had the problem, of course, of the one and the many. The idea that you're a person, I'm a person. I'm one, you are one, but together we are many, right? But yet we still say we're people. I'm a person, you're a person, but we're not the same person. I have a computer, you have a computer, but it's not the same computer. So we can look at diversity and find similarity, and we can look at similarity and find differences. We're able to compare, we're able to contrast. Now, it sounds like a really basic thing because it is. It's essential. I mean, how would you be able to even use any sounds to construct words? How would you be able to do that? How would you be able to meaningfully communicate at all? How would you be able to identify something as a step? You'd have to have some kind of category for what a step is, right? So like all of these things require at the base of these an idea about the one and the many. But unbelieving philosophies fall on different sides of an emphasis. They struggle to do that because their worldview does not account for it. Their worldview falls on in one of two directions, either the diversiphilia cult that we see all the time, or the idea of this like mystical oneness. We're all one. You'll see. Consequently, every object in the universe is united, right? Not by an infinitely improbable accident, but necessarily, because the many particulars of man's experience all originate from the one. They are by definition related to one another. Consequently, man's philosophical and scientific descriptions of those relationships are not mere fictions. They're real, and they're meaningful. So our worldview accounts for this in this manner, okay? It's how it accounts for it. Because the one is rational, logic has an absolute referent. And because rationality extends to everything the one has done, it is universal. Because that's a difficulty. We saw that in the debate between Bonson and Stein. We streamed it yesterday, and we watched the debate between presuppositionalist and an atheist. They were going back and forth, and it got down to the laws of logic, and it was all like, well, these are just conventions. They're agreed upon. They're activities of the mind. But one mind is not another mind, is not another mind, is not another mind. And a convention, can you have different conventions? Different people agree with different things? Maybe over here in this little tribe, you don't abide by that particular law of logic. How do they account for the universality of that? How? Or is it just a word game? Is it just a psychological thing? That's all it is. And is it for everybody or one person? Mind and matter are appropriate to each other. Okay? The categories of thought correspond to the categories of reality. Man's mental processes correspond to physical processes. Survival, science, and philosophy are possible. A thing in itself can, in fact, be known. And that's because God created it, and God created us. And the God is the triune God that we believe in. And he created it in the way that our worldview describes. Let's see. Because the one created man in his own image, man transcends the deterministic nexus of the material world. Because the one regulates and orders his creation, nature is uniform, and causality exists, since the same causes bring about the same effects. Induction is possible, and universal propositions can be formulated. And since universal propositions are a precondition to logical deduction, logical deductions can be made. Okay, so again, we find in God and in creation, we find that the triune God, in creating as we believe he created, not only the world, but also ourselves, those things that are visible and those things that are invisible. And because of who we understand as God, as he has revealed himself to us in all things around and internally to us, these things would be salvaged. these things, not just salvaged, made possible, made reasonable, made intelligible, meaningful. Because the one first conceived the patterns or kinds after which all particular instantiations are created, universals have a referent and are real. Because he, in the mind of God, these things are, he sees these things coherently as a whole, through and through. It's like the speed reader who's able to look at an entire paragraph and read enormous amounts. I don't even know how they do that. It's getting closer and closer to godliness, to be quite frank, right? It's like being in two places at one time or something. It's bizarre to me. It's a difficult thing. I can read a little bit ahead, especially if I'm reading script and stuff. I learned that in college, right? With media stuff and everything. You have to learn, right, how to read teleprompters and such and script. But the idea of reading a block of words at the same time, it's a really tough thing. God does that with everything. God reads them in a block at a time, and a block, that's it. And it's the entirety. Blam! He's not surprised by something new, something that me and you happen to do. Yeah. Because the one's character constitutes an absolute criteria, which is obligatory on all creatures, and for which there are absolute consequences, morality has a referent. So that's the position that's used oftentimes in even classical apologetics when they talk about morality. Yeah. Yeah, because it's an absolute, it's obligatory on all creatures. It's an absolute criteria because it's God. Yeah, Germanicus says, my tipping point toward presuppositionalism is when I saw a video by Trent Horn that saw, quote, evil God challenge as a legitimate argument instead of a pathetic attempt by an atheist to deny God's existence. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like yes. So, I mean, this idea, we're gonna get into how did we get there? How did we get to that place where we could look at something like that, the evil God challenge, and go, it's a legitimate argument. How could we do that? And I'm not meaning to bust on his chops. I appreciate his work. I need to stress that more, actually, right? And I don't think that these two systems are as opposed. I think there are elements of it that are definitely at odds with each other. That's fine, right? However, I think that this system here makes sense of the ways and the proofs. I think without it, as you will see, it's going to become more difficult and more difficult and more difficult to conceive of how those things would be possible. And you would always leave room. We saw this in the debate over 2 days ago that we streamed on Telegram. We saw it and we talked about it. This idea that if you take an idea about knowledge, contrary to this, you will inevitably get to the place where you're going to have to say, it's at least possible if I am a person, if I am real, right? It leaves open this idea. They can say, well, I have numerous reasons, right? I believe that the reasons are compelling, but there's always that lack of certainty, always. But this story is not generally accepted today. That's an understatement, right? That's an understatement. And so, even if the above story is true, every part of it must be certified by passing the canons of man's autonomous epistemology. So nowadays, we have God in the dock, don't we? We put God in the dock. In fact, do I have, let's see here. Hold on, right here. Yeah, I was reading just yesterday the C.S. Lewis remark, right, about God being in the dock. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, the God in the dock argument, right? Here it is. Yep. Who shall judge? The circumstances in which we find ourselves defending the Christian faith is aptly described by C.S. Lewis. The ancient man approached God, or even the gods, as the accused person approaches his judge. For the modern man, the roles are reversed. He is the judge. God is in the dock. The trial may even end in God's acquittal, but the important thing is that man is on the bench and God is in the dock. Yes. So much of the debates go about like that. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I agree, Germanicus. Yeah, you said you don't mean to be hard on Mr. Horn either. Yeah, and let me stress that, and stress it for you too, okay? Because it really bothered me that there was another thing kind of like that was like, well, that this is a really good point for us to consider. Why is it that even with grace, and even with our faith and stuff, that we're really no different? We don't really do much different than people in the world. And I'm like, it was said during Lent. And I was like, we go to confession. We stand in a line and we partake in a sacrament. And even if you just want to say the functional terms of this, we are fasting during Lent. We pray the rosary. We frequent the sacraments. Baptize our babies. Submit to the laws of the church. Assent to the authority of the magisterium. They don't do that. Unbelievers don't do that. We definitely act differently. God has transformed us. He's transformed our minds. He's infused within us this powerful thing that makes us continually reaching out, right? Going up that ladder, that great ascent. Falling, but what do we do when we fall? We go back to confession. Trust me, I've been there a couple times, right? That's not a good argument. That's an ignorant statement. It's from Ben Watkins too. We are Facebook friends for what that's worth, right? Yeah. Consequently, right? The idea that God is in the dock, right? Every object in the universe. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's got to be certified. It's got to be certified by man's autonomous mind. That's what we do. So how have they done it? Well, let's go back in time, right? We're going to get in the DeLorean. We're going to get in the DeLorean. We're going to be going back in time. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. We got to go back. The debate over the nature of ultimate reality was the beginning of metaphysics. And arguments over metaphysics lead to arguments about arguments. And the debate over what constituted a good argument was the beginning of what we call epistemology. What was needed was a theory of knowledge by which one could know that a given proposition was true. Okay, so we're trying to study the reality, the ultimate reality of things. And in doing so, we're getting into conversations inevitably about what is an argument? What is it? What is knowledge? How would we know these things? You had the Presocratics. They have exemplified a few epistemological propensities that have continued throughout history. What are they? Right? Some of them, like Parmenides, felt that the best arguments are obtained through reason. For example, if all men are mortal, and if Socrates is a man, then one can reason that Socrates is mortal, and necessarily so. The appeal, but by the way, this is one of those things, necessarily so, it's if Socrates is a man, and if men are mortal, then that would be the case. It's a big fat if. We're going to find out why. Okay? The appeal to these thinkers is certainty. If reason clearly dictates something and experience suggests something else, then there's a problem with experience. Reason is believing. Okay? And so it's one of these things. It's one of these things where they're trying to balance, and this is something that Ronald Knox dealt with his whole life. He was on the side his whole life of the rationalist. However, he always had this kind of difficulty with it because of experience. And so much of his book on enthusiasm was about that. But the biography is about him. His writings, of his other writings, and the way that he talks about it. At the end of his life, talking about the role of even kind of the more intuitive Christian, right? the one who may base it more on feelings or just these kind of snap judgments about the world as a bigger picture, the religious story that they've told themselves about their lives, and the feelings that provokes. He tried to find kind of a balance, in a way, between St. Thomas and oh my gosh, Pascal. Okay. On the other hand, Democritus, he felt that the best arguments are obtained through experience. Seeing is believing. Okay. So you have reason is believing, seeing is believing. Experience, reason. You have these two systems. The appeal to these thinkers is the concreteness of their experiences. That's what Knox at the end of his life was kind of struggling with, right? In his old man book that he never got to finish. These things are still with us today. Rationalism and empiricism. Rationalism was developed by Plato and hits its high watermark, with the father of modern philosophy, Descartes. Empiricism was developed by Plato's student Aristotle and reached its modern expression in John Locke. So, and by the way, if there's anybody out there that's like, well, I have a little bit of a disagreement. Look, we're using this as a thumbnail sketch, broad strokes, right? If you'd like to debate this stuff out further, you can always reach out to me, of course. And I may actually agree with you on some of this. Rationalism. The rationalist takes his mode of truth from mathematics. These ideas are known a priori. They're said to be innate and self-evidently true. Descartes says they are clear and distinct. Unfortunately, okay, so you'll hear this. Well, that's self-evident. It's self-evidently true. Unfortunately, these truths were not self-evident to the empiricists, or I would add, or so they claimed. So they insisted. They were quick to point out that not even the rationalists agree on what is clear and distinct. So you have differences over what is self-evident. Take the founding fathers, for example. There are certain things that they believed were self-evident. Do you believe they are? Did all the popes believe those things, in fact, were self-evident? Are there arguments that those things are, in fact, not self-evident? Plato, Descartes, Chardin, all conceive very different rationalist systems. Aristotle and Locke expressed concern that such unjustified starting points would color someone's observations and destroy objectivity. So if you have different starting points, but you're saying that this is how it applies to all of reality, and that's your starting point, that's going to affect the way that you interpret the rest of the stuff. There is a harmony between what your ultimate starting point is and the means, mechanisms, procedures that you use in order to evaluate and interpret claims and the world and to reach that conclusion. There's a harmony. They impact each other. Yeah, so if you have somebody who begins, right, they felt that if one knows himself, allows himself to begin with some absolute starting point, that is justified only by his own internal criterion and sense of rational necessity. Then he's made himself the absolute determiner of truth, and he abandoned any hope of objectivity. So if you're using your idea as, no, this is the foundation that's absolute, this is universal, and you have people who disagree, right? You're going to find yourself increasingly winnowed down into the world where, wow, that's a fancy little trick you got in your mind. Mr. Pope, Mr. Sovereign Supreme Pontiff of the epistemological universe. Oh. Here's an example. Okay. Here is an example. Euclidean geometry. It's been the paradigm case for a priori formal systems for over 2 millennia. Its axioms are self-evident, clear, and distinct. Let's take Euclid's axiom of parallels. Quote, given a straight line and a point not on that line, one and only one line can be drawn through that point parallel to the given line, end quote. This axiom appears to most people to be self-evident. So you have a line and you got one point not on that line, you're drawing a line through that line, right? We can visualize that even in our heads. So it appears to be self-evident, true beyond a rational doubt. But the assumption behind rationalism is that if a proposition is self-evident, then it describes the world in which we live. But there are reasons for thinking that this self-evidentness has more to do with the structure of our language and our assumptions about reality than the reality itself. Currently, there seems to be a consensus in cosmology that the universe is finite and unbounded. But this means our universe is non-Euclidean. Thus, there can be no infinite straight lines in our universe, and Euclid's fifth axiom is false. Yeah. More than that, you have other non-Euclidean systems, right? That fully coherent, non-Euclidean geometries have been developed that reject this axiom. Consequently, if we accept the current cosmological model, we have here a proposition that is both self-evident and false. It's self-evident and it's false at the same time. Again, we're back in that place of something's got to give. But if the current state of cosmology is even possible, then the traditional understanding of self-evidence is false. So just think about that. So we'd have a difficulty basing it off of certain standards. That's not to say that something being self-evident, right, within a certain context or framework wouldn't make any sense, kind of like natural theology. Same thing, right? But if you're basing it off of man is the foundation, our individual experiences, our individual reason, how we're interpreting and understanding the world, you're going to be in a difficult spot. There is no problem with revising empirical a posteriori postulates, but a priori self-evident truths are supposed to be absolute and invariant. If it's self-evident, it's not variant. You're not going to be like, oh, dude, that's totally self-evident. And then later, I got to change that. Yeah, that's not self-evident. No, this one is. You've been basing this entire model off of something you called self-evident that in fact was not. And by the way, a paradox in the comments, a paradox would not be something that both is self-evident and false. That's a contradiction. And I would be very careful about using those interchangeably. Yeah. Propositions that appear self-evident certainly may do so because the rules of our language won't allow us to think otherwise. That's a good question, though. Right? It doesn't allow us to think otherwise. Is that sufficient? It depends. On the one hand, the empiricist, so now he's moving from there and he's saying, okay, look, so we're seeing a leaky bucket. We've got ourselves a leaky bucket. We got ourselves a problem. Empiricism. On the one hand, the empiricist cannot see the universal propositions and perfect triangles. So an empiricist, right, who's saying, well, it's only through the senses, only through sensory experience. That's it. A very extremely limited construct. They cannot see universal propositions. They cannot see perfect triangles. On the other hand, he does see mirages and sticks that appear to bend when stuck in the water. Okay? So you see a mirage, and you have to flee away from empiricism. You got to flee away into rationalism. You got to figure out some other way to explain that mirage. You have to have some way to explain the hallucination. You have to have some other way to explain the delusion. Maybe the dream. Right? And the idea of a stick in the water. Have you ever done that? You put your arm in the water and your arm like bends. You ever seen that? How would the empiricist know? If you put your arm underneath the water, if you put it underneath the water to try to see your other arm, or you put a stick under there to say, well, the stick is straight. Well, it's not straight anymore, not under the water. You got yourself a problem. Yet in both cases, they make judgments contrary to those experiences. Furthermore, empiricists have never successfully accounted for how they could have any experience without first bringing concepts like causality, space, time, quantity, etc. into the experience. So again, it's one of those things where to claim you have an experience of the outside world, you're assuming a whole bunch of junk, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's a whole bunch already there that's cooked in to what you're talking about. already. Otherwise, you sit there and how would you derive that? How would you infer? But the bigger problem, George Berkeley. He acknowledged Locke's realization that though our ideas come from our perceptions, the only objects of our minds are in fact those ideas. Not the world, not the external world, but what's in our heads. Our minds never make direct contact with the external material world. So you're seeing that, it's a trick for us, isn't it? I see myself, touching the mic. And I confirm that, right? But I'm sensing that it's not connecting immediately to my brain. There's a process involved. It's not simultaneous. And I would have to have ideas about each and every one of those. But even my ideas, how do they connect with that to the outside world? Consequently, we can never set our ideas over against the material world and corroborate the integrity of those ideas. In fact, Berkeley observed that since the mind never makes contact with the material world, there's no empirical reason to think that it is the source of our perceptions. Yeah. In fact, there's no reason, to think that the material world exists at all. It may just be in our brain, folks. Solipsism might just be in our brain. All of it. There might not be a material world. And by the way, that would include you. That would include you. That would include me for you. You'd be like, why you? Why me? You're the one that's fake. You're the one that's not real. I'm the real brain in the vat. You're the real brain plugged into the matrix somewhere all by yourself. Or maybe we all are there. How would you even be able to say that though? How would you? Well, in the framework of the story playing in my brain, everybody is real. We'd have to really get into the brain part. Let's assume we have a desk in front of us. You say, I have a perception of a desk in front of me. Therefore, there's a desk in front of me. The first part, I have a perception of a desk in front of me, is empirical and it's not controversial. But the second one, there's a desk in front of me, does not follow from the first. It has no logical connection. It's not empirical. It's a bold metaphysical assertion. Falls apart. Empiricism. Falls apart. This kind here. Untethered, ungrounded from a worldview that is triune, based on the triune God. Yeah, it's kind of, and this knew no bounds, even with David Hume. Yeah. Hume took Berkeley's rigorous empiricism a step further, and he demonstrated that just as there's no empirical basis for belief in an external material world as the cause of our perceptions, there's no empirical basis for belief in an internal mental world either. Look at the rabbit hole, guys. Look at the rabbit hole. You disconnect from God, you put God in the dock, and you got these clowns. You got that? He pointed out that since our experience is limited to our perceptions, there's nothing in our experience to indicate that the origin of our perceptions is either a material substance or a mental image. Therefore, any substantive affirmation beyond perception is empirically unjustified. The external world, whether mental or material, is empirically undemonstrable and analytically unnecessary. It's just a speculation, folks. It's just a speculation. Even the mind. Yeah. So it's just going down into the abyss, down into the cesspool. It's ridiculous. But then he turns the gun on the internal world. So you think he's done. You think that no. He puts his gun on the material world. He points out that our notion of ourselves as a substance that continues to receive perceptions is another unsubstantiated postulation. So the idea that we are a self that continues regardless of time or change, environment, if that's real, right? all of these things if it's not real. You're assuming that that yourself is a kind of substance, that it continues to receive perceptions. And this is an unsubstantiated postulation. Among our perceptions, we never perceive the self as the perceiver of our perceptions. So you just, again, deeper. Our concepts of an external material world, right, and our internal mental or spiritual world are neither analytic nor are they perceived. Therefore, they are, on the canons of empiricism, nonsense. Cuckoo, bird, nonsense. It's a joke. But what other concepts are neither analytically true or perceived? So you go, does it still go? Where can we lead this? Where does it end? Identity is the concept that there is some continuity in the nature of an object over time. We have no sensation of identity. So how do we know identity? How do we know it based on this worldview? How do we know it based on this standard? This concept is supplied by the perceiver, yet it is not analytically necessary, nor is it perceived. This is the same thing Heraclitus said when he said, you can never step in the same river twice. This would apply not just to individuals, but objects. He critiqued both the foundations of science and common sense. It was his critique of causality. Causality, like identity, and external and internal substance, are properties of our minds, not of the world. They are the products of our imagination. The reason we believe in the external world, the self, the identity, is not for logical or empirical reasons, for there are none. It's psychological. It's a habit of the mind. Now, secondly, if there's no identity, and this is actually a big deal, because a lot of people would like to use arguments regarding causality. Secondly, if there is no untethered from a presuppositional framework wherein that would even make sense. Second, if there is no identity between one event and another, each and every perception is new and distinct. Hume should not have been able to say that there is a similarity or likeness between any two things at all. So every new thing, if this is true, and there's no identity between things, he should have never been able to say, this did this to that, right? You'd never be able to do that. In fact, he wouldn't have even been able, when people bring up billiard balls, he wouldn't be able to do that because he would be identifying this billiard ball with other billiard balls. Do you see the idea of the one and the many there? He wouldn't even be able to describe one thing without the context of other things either dissimilar or similar. Yeah. Similarity is not perceived. And to suggest a similarity between perceptions at any level is to make an identity, something that Hume already demonstrated could not be done empirically. Consequently, Hume should not have been able to speak of prior billiard ball events, right? In fact, Hume shouldn't have identified a single event as a billiard ball, like I just said. But there could be no categories if there's no similarities. So he wouldn't even be able to meaningfully communicate. And again, we're back to Wittgenstein. Again, if you're following my logic here, if you're following my reasoning, and we get to this crazy place, what you're going to find is that once you reach the conclusions, you have to kick down that ladder and pass over everything else in that dreadful silence. And Jesse said, same with human beings. There's no continuity. Every set of atoms in your body is swapped with a new set over the course of 7 years. Yeah, how many parts are necessary to keep the same boat? Yeah, the boat problem, Jesse, in the comments. So you wouldn't even be able to identify a category, by the way, of analytic or synthetic or empirical or anything. Now, Kant tried to come in and save the day, right? Kant tried to come in and save the day. He's like, this is a big problem, man. This is a big problem. Because people would have to already know a priori what the world is, what he is, and how the two are and could be related. He thought he could save epistemology, by the way. And he thought he could do this by shifting the location of these realities from the world to the mind. So he's like, okay, we can't deal with it outside our brains, but we'll put these things inside. Okay. Because the categories of thought exist in the mind prior to our experience, they are a priori. Because they refer to reality, they're synthetic. Hence, they are called synthetic a prioris. Our experience of the world is a compound of sense data and these categories of thought. So he's saying our experience is the sense data that we have in the categories of thought in our brain. They are the way we perceive the world. Okay? Whether it's the way of the world or it is not. Hence, Kant points out we cannot know that world itself, right? The world beyond, we cannot know. We can only know the world as the mind presents it to us. Do you see the problem with this? Do you see in Kant the beginning of these ethnographies? The beginning of these black feminist lesbian epistemologies? Do you see it? Right? The Eskimo lesbian priestess interfaither epistemologies. Do you see it? It's all coming. It's all coming down the pike. And all that's required is simply a story. And that maybe it doesn't contradict with itself. But did Kant actually save epistemology? Did he? His synthetic a prioris were, by his own admission, they describe no properties, right, in the noumenal world. They are the mind's contribution to the phenomenal world. So what exactly does it mean to say that they are synthetic? What is it? You're like, come on, you're using terms now. How does that even describe it? In fact, he has not answered Hume at all. All he did was he changed the subject. He did not tell us about the world. He told us about our minds and how we think and called it synthetic. That's it. And he has no place to salvage. I mean, well, I guess we'll touch on it in coherentism in a moment, right? That's in the foundationalism section. But he doesn't salvage it. We're not talking just purely the operations of the mind. Well, that causes problems. They give up describing what the world actually is, right? People who followed Kant are like, well, I don't know about describing the world as it actually is, right? But they had to figure out some means to describe this underlying structure. What was it? How could we know anything at all still? Foundational. So you had these foundationalistic ideas. You have the advent of foundationalism. It's popularly understood here. They realized that all beliefs could be divided into two categories. Beliefs that are justified by referring to other beliefs. So they would say, well, why do you believe that? Well, because of this belief. We see this a lot of times in Sola Scriptura, for example. Okay? Well, why do you interpret it this way? Because of this verse, because of that verse, because of this verse. But yet they're saying that will provide a foundation. But they can't escape the idea that it is individualistic, solipsistic. That may be true in and of itself, but it's your interpretation. How do you deal with that? You have rival interpretations. Beliefs that are justified by referring to other beliefs and beliefs that are not subject to justification, but are the foundation for all of their beliefs. So some of those beliefs are foundational, right? They'd say they don't rely on anything else. The challenge here, of course, are these foundational beliefs. Rationalists thought that their innate, self-evident a priori beliefs were the best candidates. Empiricists thought that their sense impressions were the best candidates. What's the problem? What's the problem? So we're back again. Look, we haven't moved very far, have we? we've gone into a bunch of time. We've moved through a bunch of people, different countries, all sorts of stuff, and we're still stuck in the same rigmarole. We're still back to rationalism, empiricism. Aristotle had already pointed out long ago that our options regarding first truths, that is, foundations, are limited. When asked to justify why we ultimately believe something, we will either give an answer or we will not. Okay, so that seems really reasonable, doesn't it? Right? So, yeah, when talking about these ultimate truths, we're either going to give a reason or we're not going to give a reason. If we do not give an answer, our belief is arbitrary and Theistic. So if you say, why do you believe that's the ultimate foundation? And you do the Wittgenstein not providing an answer. Okay, so I guess you just believe it for whatever, Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's just up to you. You believe it because you believe it. And sometimes people will say that. You'll hear that. I believe it because I believe it. That person should be watching the show. That person should be watching the show, learning how to better understand their own faith and how to express that to other people. Because simply saying, I believe it because I believe it is poo-poo trash. If we do not give an answer, our belief is arbitrary, it's Theistic. If we give an answer, then our answer will make reference to some other belief or beliefs. Are you seeing the problem? There's a couple of them. Then we will be asked to justify those beliefs. So if you give an explanation for it, and you're providing other beliefs, right? And those other beliefs would kind of be behind you. Like, these are the reasons why I have this foundation. Well, then those are your foundation. Well, then you could just ask, well, why is that your foundation? Well, because of this, this, this. Well, now those are your foundation. There you go, kicking the curb, infinite regress. If in the course of justifying our beliefs, we refer back to some belief that we have already believed in, then it's nothing more than an unjustified dogma. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. I flipped it over the wrong side. Then we will be asked to justify those beliefs and so on. If in the course of justifying our beliefs, we refer back to some belief that we've already been asked to justify, if we do, then we will be involved in a circular argument. You hear this all the time from the foundationalists. That's circular reasoning. Yeah, so is your use of logic. So is your use of logic. And technically, so is your idea about concluding that there's God if deep down inside you are presupposing a host of things that only make sense in your worldview according to God. You're LARPing to think that you're playing, the neutral hand. You're LARPing. That's fake and phony. Like we say here, it's like searching for Bobby Fischer, that movie. Bobby Fischer, he even played against himself, and he was trying to be as fair as he possibly could, not letting himself know of what he was going to do. What are you talking about? Who believed that? Who wrote that line? Who wrote that line? I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. If, however, we never refer back to a belief we have already been asked to justify, then we are involved in an infinite regress. So if you say, why do you believe that? Because of that. Why do you believe that? Because of that. Why do you believe that? Because of that. It would just go forever and ever and ever. The only way to escape that are two options. Fideism, you don't give an answer at all, or you refer back in a circle. Good luck with that. An infinite regress is not satisfactory. You're simply obfuscating the fact that the belief in question is never, in fact, justified. So if you say, well, it just goes on and on and on, you are admitting, you're it's like a self-concealing thing that you're like, honest to goodness, I don't really know how to justify this. It is admittedly arbitrary. It could, in fact, be wrong, but we're going to use this as our ultimate starting point. Now we're back again. We're back again to the concern, right? The concern in the beginning that if you start at the wrong place Aristotle's concerned, you start at the wrong starting point, it's going to color the entire process after that. Circularity. So you end up having this idea that says, okay, we have to deal with the circularity part because the infinite regress is not legit. We cannot do the idea that it's going to be fideism, the idea that I don't have to give an account, the na-na-na boo-boo, I don't have to tell you account of knowledge. So circularity came in. But what kind of circularity? Coherentism. Right? They think that they have beat the dilemma, right? The foundation dilemma. And how do they do it? They point out that beliefs do not neatly divide into categories of foundational beliefs and justified beliefs. So they go, look, it doesn't actually work that way, guys. It doesn't work that way. All our beliefs are related to one another in the form of a coherent web. Look, I agree with that to an extent, but only insofar as that coherent web can actually is a coherent web of analogously known things that is analogous to the coherent understanding and knowledge of God of all things. Otherwise, trash. TNR says, with all the research and reading Jeremiah is doing, it'd be awesome if he writes a book on those topics. Dude, yeah. There's stuff in the works, dude. I got people actually working with me now. Trying to help me to better understand, like, because I have certain weaknesses, dude. Like, if I talk about media theory, I know the journalese, right? And there are a lot of philosophers wouldn't know journalese. I would. And if they were talking to me about journalism, I'm not the kind of guy that would be bothered by the fact they're not using that language. But it might make it a little bit more difficult. I'd have to focus a little better. If I'm really good at what I'm doing, I wouldn't mind. And I don't mind. But a lot of people in the world of philosophy, if you don't use that particular language, then even if you're describing the same thing, it's like they don't know, the rose is a rose idea. They don't know. It's like they struggle with it. He's not using the words right. So I got somebody help me who knows how to use the words right. Yeah. And by the way, there's a lot going on, buddy. Believe me. All our beliefs are related to one another in a form of a coherent web. Some subset of our beliefs may be more important and juridical than other beliefs, but all beliefs hang on all other beliefs, and nothing is foundational. In fact, that would be its own kind of foundation. It'd be like a platform of interconnected things. I describe that as a foundation or framework whereon and wherein we live, move, have our being, provide justification to those things. So it seems a little bit to make sense almost, except what? It's not coherent. Not coherent in any sense that's universal. All you've done is you've said, my fairy tale doesn't have any, pitfalls. It seems like a really tight-knit story. Yeah. It's not analogous in a way that can tap into something that is coherent in the full sense, a universal sense, to know every single thing as it truly is, to pre-interpret the world because, he created the universe. He designed those things for a purpose. They don't have that. So they're a host. So Kant is done. The coherentists are done. Foundationalism is trapped in the balancing act between fideism, the infinite regress, hoping that people don't recognize, or circularity, which they despise. The bottom line is this: we must determine our criterion of justification prior to determining our criterion of justification so that we can use it to determine our criterion of justification. If we recognize this as a problem that is in principle unsolvable, we will save ourselves considerable time and headache by not chasing solutions that appear to work only because they have first obfuscated the problem. Don't fall for the folly of the world. Don't be, whisked away by the so-called wisdom of the world. Don't be snookered, right? Don't be snookered, right? By the so-called knowledge. Don't do it. He made all things, visible and invisible. He made you. You are ensouled, brother. You are ensouled, sister. He revealed himself. He revealed himself, special revelation, true, divine, and he revealed himself in nature. We can look at nature and we can see his power, his divinity, and his attributes. Everywhere around us, things are crying out loud, louder, and loudest, but no matter where we go, it's loud. Outside and inside of ourselves. Well, this all, of course, led to skepticism. You say, well, where can we go, dude? Where can we go, Paleocrat? Skepticism. Yeah, okay. External world, the idea, well, right? Descartes, right, is I think, therefore I am. But what precisely does the term self refer to? What are you talking about? You're using a category. Self. What are you? Are you simply a dream? Are you an idea in the mind of a god or a demon? Wasn't that a little bit of a fear, by the way? Wasn't it a fear? Are you programmed on magnetic tape? Are you simply the nexus of ideas, as David Hume suggests? Are you material, spiritual, abstract, or concrete? Whenever autonomous man says his self exists, he has some metaphysical notion behind the term that he cannot justify. First things first, son. First things first. No. But if no given notion of the self can be justified, then no content can be attributed to the notion of the self. So you're stuck. You're stuck. Doesn't help. It doesn't get you out of the bind. It's not, you can't have a foundation there. Reliability of the senses. Autonomous man also cannot justify the belief that there is a sufficient correspondence between the way the world appears to him and the way the world really is. In fact, the world can appear to us only as the senses present it to us. We already know that our eyes do not see the full spectrum of light, nor do we know if objects in the world have properties, maybe essential properties, for which we have no corresponding senses. Why should we think our five senses detect even a small percentage of the range of properties that exist in the world? We do know that the sonar of bats, the stereoscopic eyes of man, and the compound eyes of flies all project very different images. Each gives sufficient information for survival, but which should be taken as normative? How do we know any of them are sufficient to enable us to even engage in an analysis of the possibility of empirical justification? In other words, if we understand that we are limited, our limitedness, which, by the way, our limitedness, you're now in the world of Bonaventure. You're now in the world, in fact, of Ronald Knox at the end of his life, emphasizing the limitedness of man. If that's true and we recognize that there are multiple spectrums that we don't see, there's multiple things that we don't see and that we don't understand, and we can say our senses give us a good idea for how we can survive, but that may not, you can survive in this world and live a very long life and have a worldview that is completely hogwash. Ask the founder of Unarius. She lived until she was quite old. It's some kind of weird new age cult, alien cult. She's all like, come to me kind of thing. Weirdness, stars all over behind her and stuff. Magical rainbows. Men dressed up like Star Trek kind of stuff. Reincarnation, all that jazz. We'll talk about you. I may even talk about them on Monday. That'd just be fun. But you can live a long time. You can live a long time and be completely ignorant of the universe. We know this even from tribes. What's the moon up there? It's a dragon. No, it's a dragon. Oh, okay. No offense. No offense, But that doesn't prove it's actually accurate. It just proves you can survive. Even if it is a fact that all minds impose the same structures on the world, causing all our experiences to be uniform, that does not, as some have suggested to us, objectivity. Rather, it precludes our ability to contrast our experiences and get behind our mental structures of the real world. Speaking of a mental structure of the real world, let me introduce you. Oh, you came into my office. This right here is little Louie. Little Louie is one of the members of the staff.
A dinosaur.
Oh, you're a dinosaur?
Yeah.
What? Well, yeah. Is Wolfie the dinosaur master?
No.
Who is?
Mama.
Mama's the dinosaur master. No.
Oh yeah.
Where's Mama right now? How did she let this happen?
Mama up there. Shower.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of information, but yeah, she's upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take a shower.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, look. Are you able? You know what? You can chill with me. You can chill with me, man. We're gonna just chill in here together. Okay. You can't play with that though. Okay. So you're gonna hang out with me for a minute, bud. You good with this? Are you guys good with this? I hope so. Okay. So let's see. All right. So let me get back here. We're over on this side. Sorry about that. I'm sorry for the distraction, but you know what? I'm not sorry. I do this show because of my kids, don't I? I do. Yes, I do. That's what I do. Yeah, don't play that. Those are it's it's not gonna hurt you. Okay. So the idea, right? Even if the fact that all minds impose the same structures, it might just be it precludes our ability to contrast our experiences and get behind our mental structures of the real world. So if we are all just doing the same thing in our heads, these structures, then we're basically thinking the same stuff. We would be trapped, hermetically sealed into this idea. That would make it even worse. It'd make it even worse. How would anybody know anything, Lou? You don't even know, do you? No way. That's crazy. You have the inductive problem. The autonomous man cannot justify his habit of making inductive generalizations. Hume argued that inductive generalizations are not even probable, because you hear people say, "Well, we've analyzed the world enough in the past, past futures, to make sense of what we can say about the future." Because there's a bunch of past futures that have been the same, right? If I drop the ball, it falls to the ground. If I drop the ball again, I know it's going to drop to the ground because it happened in the past. Well, so what? You're actually not answering the question. But worse than that, right? Worse than that, Hume points out that for one to argue that induction is even probable, they would also have to make the case for causality and the uniformity of nature. So it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It doesn't. Yeah. My wife says, "Why? He was supposed to stay in the living room. I'm gone for 5 minutes." And we all know now you were taking a shower. Everybody heard it. Everybody heard it. Angela! Yeah, the life of the Kaiser, I tell you. It's real rough, isn't it? Yeah. Oh. Karl Popper also thought that Hume's argument against induction, that they were insurmountable. So he advocated the abandonment of induction. He wanted falsification instead. Right? So you wouldn't even be able to know that the future is going to be like the past. You're totally hosed. You're totally hosed. First, it abandons the possibility of finding a proposition that's positively indicated and justified, for the exceedingly weak possibility of a mere guess being corroborated by our failure to falsify it. Yeah. So, and they're like, oh, you'll hear that a lot of times. Well, if this was true, with scientists and stuff. Oh yeah, if it was totally true, it'd be all over the papers, man. Dude, I'm sorry, I work in the newspaper business. That's baloney. Yeah. And people who have run the peer-reviewed journals, many of them have said it is also baloney. Uniformity of nature. Autonomous man cannot demonstrate the uniformity of nature. He can argue that the future will be like the past only if he already knows that the future will be like the past. You like that thing? You want to listen for a second? Yeah. So he wouldn't even be able. There you go. Bertrand Russell said it this way. He said, it has been argued that we have reason to know that the future will resemble the past because what was the future has constantly become the past and has always been found to resemble the past. That sounds pretty good, right? A lot of people say that. So that we readily have experience of the future, namely of times which were formerly future, which we may now call the past. Sounds like something everybody uses. Russell explained the problem this way. But such an argument really begs the question. Here, going back out. You want to sit with me? Okay. You can sit with me till the end of the show, okay? But don't pull that out. Don't pull it out. Okay. Okay. You keep trying to pull out my cord. I won't be able to talk. You can't. That's why I'm saying you guys think I'm mean for blaming my kids for all of my technical difficulties. He's trying to pull out the XLR right now. He's like, I'm going to take this out and then I'll be talking, a bunch of jive turkey by myself. But it begs the question. We have experience of past futures, but not of future futures. And the question is, will future futures resemble past futures? You can do this with the deduction. You can do it with logic. Autonomous man can make no direct case for the validity of logic. He cannot even say what logic is. Is logic a substance? Is it a property? Is it concrete and particular? Or is it abstract and universal? What is it? Where is it? And this is especially a bad thing for the materialists, right? The people, everything's material. It's a great line in the debate of Bonds and Stein, where Stein's asking, do you know anything that's, what is God? Right? He says, is God material or immaterial? He says, immaterial. And then later, he says, do you know anything other than God that is immaterial? And he goes, the law of logic, which is what he asked him, because Bonson asked him, do you believe in logic? Yes, I do. Do you believe it's material or immaterial? Okay, then when he flipped it around, Stein just walked into it. He's a real dummy. Not having a category for non-material universal entities, they often suggest that logic is merely a convention. This, of course, makes it arbitrary, and it completely obliterates universality. Destroys it. Destroys it. No, I want to go ahead and let's put this over here. Try and get you in here. There we go. So how exactly do we know that all reality must conform to the principles of so-called logic? Based on what? More to the point, induction and deduction are methods that presuppose logic. So, I mean, as I said, it doesn't matter what we do. We can go down and down and down and down and down and down we go. Where this abyss ends, nobody knows. Nobody knows. One may be tempted here to respond that because no counterexample can be imagined, the universality of logic is undeniable. But does the mere fact that we are psychologically so disposed that we cannot think of the world in other than logical categories justify us in concluding that the world itself is bound by those categories? Why should we think our psychological limitations are descriptive of the entire universe? Hey, don't put it back. You're trying to sabotage. You're my little sabotager. Yeah. It merely means we cannot modify the way we think about it. But what kind of a foundation is this? Do I say, I don't know what it is, I don't know why I believe it, and I don't know if it always applies, but it's the solid foundation on which everything is built, and which our apologetic must be done when we're talking to unbelievers? No way. No way. People have tried pragmatism. That's just a joke. That's just a joke. So what are we going to conclude? This is the conclusion. Yeah, we made it through, bud. We made it through, buddy. It's true. Here, actually, let's see if I can get you on my other leg here. Lift up. Lift up. There we go. Here we go.
Mama?
Yeah. Okay. Mama's out there.
Mama told me.
Oh, she's gonna come get you? No. Shh, just okay. Don't make a noise. She won't see you. What the history of epistemology teaches us is that man, without an epistemological jumpstart from God, without the revelation of God and the theistic worldview expounded in it, cannot know the nature of himself, logic, the world, universals, or how they are all or could be related. I love you, bro. I love my kids, man. Oh, I love my kids. In short, it cannot attain a coherent theory of knowledge. Consequently, no beliefs can be justified. No beliefs can attain to the level of knowledge. Therefore, because theistic revelation alone is the basis upon which knowledge is possible, it is the precondition for knowledge and is transcendentally and necessarily true. We've gone through to show, and look, people can bring up all different little various schools, but at the base level, we've dealt with them. At the base level. To say, look, they're going to fall. Because at the core, each one of those schools has a difficulty. Now, does that mean that we don't know anything empirically? No. Does that mean that rationality is toast? No. But those things lacking the triune God and the preconditions by which the Catholic worldview, those things that we believe about the nature of reality and of people, knowledge, ethics, etc., that those systems detached from that, not grounded and rooted in that, would not be able to account for the possibility of knowing anything. And why would that actually matter? Well, not only because they can't account for knowing anything, but also because they're trying to convince you that you don't know anything, that they know the real truth. It's a joke. Oh yeah, man. I can't account for like morality and stuff. I don't know how anything is truly right or wrong. I don't know how there's any universality in ethics or anything, or normativity in ethics. But dude, I know it's wrong. I don't have any standard for judging one thing evil or one thing good. But dude, bro, that's totally evil. There's no right or wrong, but that's definitely wrong. What a joke. It's one of those, the best argument for the existence of God is that without the existence of the triune God, you can make no arguments at all. And you flesh that out. You flesh it out. Deconstruction. Construction, contra error. Proof. Bada boom, bada bing. Destroy their systems. Autonomous man can use reason and his senses while denying belief in God. And he can thereby do math, science, manipulate the world around him. But he can give no account of reason and senses apart from God. Therefore, just as reason presupposes the actuality of logic, whether or not one believes in it, so reason presupposes the actuality of God. And the truth of our first story, whether or not one believes in it at all. And so if that's the case, all arguments are arguments for the existence of God. And no argument against the existence of God can be made. Why? We just said it. Why? Because if you can't even account for the preconditions of knowledge, how are you making an argument? To whom are you making it? To what extent can you possibly know? How can you even know you? And by the way, that's the indubitable truth of St. Bonaventure. It's when one realizes that it is not possible to give an autonomous account of knowledge at all, he comes at a crossroads. He must either maintain his autonomy and surrender to the most radical skepticism, or he must surrender his autonomy to the revelation of God, not as a conclusion that has met the standard of some epistemological criterion. So he's at a crossroads. He's either got to accept it or not. If he's going to say, oh no, I can't explain knowledge. I can't even explain how I can know anything. Or maybe the real world isn't even out there. It's a big fat if at the beginning of my syllogisms. Even about man, even about mortality. A big fat if. I don't even know if you're there. If that's the case, we have to hold them account to that. We need to press them on that and say, dude, whenever from that point on, if they're trying to make those arguments, you say, no. You have your cake, you eat it too. It is a price tag for your rebellion against God. God has made foolish the wisdom of the world. He's annihilated your foundations. You built your house on sinking sand. You may recognize this as a simple disjunctive syllogism. Given that knowledge is possible at all, right? The epistemology that we've been talking about and autonomous epistemology, these are antithetical systems. They are opposed at the most foundational level. We have seen that in principle, autonomous epistemology is not possible. On this premise, all facts and all experiences are unintelligible. Therefore, we must conclude that the precondition of knowledge, those things that are necessary for us to know anything at all, for science, for knowledge, for philosophy, is the existence of the triune God and the veracity of his revelation. All other worldviews amount to nothing more than wild guessing and vain imaginings. And God is proven not as the conclusion of a rational or empirical theistic argument, but as the very ground of argument itself. You take God out of the dock, you win. You put God in the dock, you lose. You're not God. Take God out of the dock. Say, look, I'm wrong to be there. Put yourself in that dock. Put yourself there. So that's what you do. That's what you do. And you realize that the unbeliever, no matter his system, no matter what, if you drive it back down to the very bottom, you are left with these exact same things that we've been talking about. Drive them to the roots. Don't clip these branches anymore. Don't clip those little fruits. You're pruning trees. You're pruning trees is what you're doing. Stop it. Rip it up by the roots. Go after the DNA. Go after the cannon and the core. Go for the jugular. Do not mess around anymore. No footsies. None. And why would you anyway? What a pompous thing. I'm saying a truly apologetic endeavor. You know, you could be witnessing to somebody, right? You know different people where they are in their life. But you got some cat coming up saying, "Oh, you don't need God to know anything. God is a total fairy tale." Dude, annihilate it. Annihilate it. People coming up, yeah, Jesus was totally not real. Jesus, or he was real. He's just a smart guy, maybe kind of smart, probably a prophet and a rebel, but nothing more than that. Destroy that system. And if you want to know how, keep watching the series. We're going to be talking about how this applies to tons and tons and tons of arguments. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about how to debate this way, but we're also going to talk about some other stuff. We're going to talk about cults next week. I might talk about Unarius. I think it'd be fun. It'd be a little bit different. We've been doing this series 10 episodes long. It's going to go a long time, right? We want to make this a powerhouse of Catholic apologetics. It's what I want to do. That's what it is. I went back and I thought. I said, somebody asked me, what do you do? You know, some people, I remember David Gray's like, I don't know what this guy's about really. Go back and look. Enthusiasm, apologetics, Lassance, apologetics. Secular age, apologetics. Snake handlers, word of faith. The revivalism stuff, apologetics. Anti-sedevacantism. If you missed that episode, it's a doozy. It is. It's literally guns akimbo with bazookas, with laser blasters and bazookas connected to each other. Blam, blam, explosions all over the place. Fire, smoke, forever. A testimony to the power of the apologetic methodology of the saints. Saint Irenaeus we've gone through. We've gone through St. Francis de Sales and his Catholic controversy. We've shown how it applies apologetically and why this method is only at home in the Catholic Church. That's why stand firm, no fear. Take that knee for the King. He's in control, isn't he? Heaven and earth. What do you have to be afraid of? You're part of the bride. And if you're not, get inside. It's a great ride. And by the way, make sure to go over to Wolfpack Chat right now because we're doing an Afterglow Show Q&A. Going to be tons of fun. Till next time, never give up. Keep on smiling, and memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.